University, has completed his PhD from Rajiv Gandhi Center for Biotechnology in 2008, and he has joined as assistant professor in microbiology at School of Bioscience, MG University in 2010. After having a 2-year postdoc experience from University of Tokyo, Japan, and he has managed several projects funded by Department of Biotechnology, Government of India, ICMR, and the Kerala State Council for Science, Technology and Environment, and the Young Investigators Program in Biotechnology under Kerala Biotechnology Commission. And his research areas include exploration of endophytic microorganisms for bioactive compounds, study on plant growth promoting and anti-phytopathogenic properties, microbial synthesis of metal nanoparticles, etc. He has guided several students for PhD, also published several international journal papers. Yeah, you can even Google even with the Google, you can see a lot of international publications with high impact factor in his name, and also several books and book chapters are to his credit. And apart from his role as assistant professor in the School of Biosciences, he is also the honorary director of the Business Innovation and Incubation Center, which is functioning at MG University, and also the joint director of Inter-University Center for Organic Farming and Sustainable Agriculture at MG University, Kottayam. And I'm not going to take much of your time. And with immense pleasure, let me invite Dr. A.K. Radhakrishnan, Assistant Professor at School of Bioscience, MG University, for the lecture. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Madam. I take this opportunity to express sincere thanks to KCSD and KBC for providing an opportunity for me to interact with the students. And the topic of my presentation is Life and Health, a Microbiome Perspective. I think the slides are clear, isn't it?
Yes.
Can you hide that? Just below that there is a tab. Stop sharing. There is one. Can you hide? Yeah. Right. Okay, fine.
The slides are moving. Is it okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So, my talk is on life and health, a microbiome perspective. So, when we talk or discuss anything about life, actually we should go back to the origin of life. And as we all know, the origin of life, and especially the bacteria that is considered to be evolved almost 3.5 billion years ago. And the initial form of established life were in the form of microorganisms, and gradually over the period, different organisms, other organisms, and we are now in a stage where we are seeing the world as today with differentiated or well-established organisms, animals, plants, and variety of living forms, and we can see much diversity also. And when we start to think about the origin of life, the life itself starts with the microorganisms, because their presence is very essential for the existence of life. And we were not aware of the importance of microorganisms because of its basic nature, because they were microscopic in nature. And how it is important. So for that one, we have to have a very basic idea, especially for the students, as we all know that the development of the branch of microbiology. So the basic problem with respect to microbiology is we are studying the organisms which we cannot see with our naked eye. So since we cannot see them, the first and basic requirement for studying them is a need for lens systems or instruments to magnify the organisms and to make it visible or observable with our naked eye. So the first landmark or first important step was with respect to development of lens system. And after that, the contributions of many scientists, especially Louis Pasteur, Robert Koch, and a series of contributions from these scientists has paved the way for early days of microbiology, basically developing methods for culturing the organisms. And then came the era of molecular biology and general microbiology. And that development has supported significantly with the findings from molecular biology, identification of DNA, sequencing of DNA, and later through the genome sequencing also, the methods to sequence DNA DNA sequencing, and also the recombinant DNA technology. All these methods significantly improved our understanding about microorganisms. So when we consider all these things, the question is that the initial studies, basically it was focused towards single organism or basically pure culture, and that was very important at that time because of the challenges with the pathogenic organisms. So that paved the way for medical microbiology, genetics, and molecular biology also. But when we consider the fact that there was a time, that once unknown time, because there were no methods were there, no instruments or methods were there to study the microorganism, that period is unknown one. And later it became known, that means the methods were developed and instruments were developed to observe the organism, to study the organisms. And now the question is, how much do we really know about microorganisms? That's the most important thing. And when we consider these things also, microorganisms, generally know, we are aware of microorganisms from many different applications or significance or importance in any area, like industrial application, medical or clinical, agriculture, environmental, and the area of microbiology has progressed to such a level that even synthetic organisms were also developed, like in 2010, Craig Venter Institute developed the first self-replicating synthetic bacterial cell also. So the study or the understanding or the technological developments, our basic understanding progress in such a way that we could make the synthetic bacterial cell also. But the most important feature with respect to the microorganism is their diversity and abundance. That are the two important components or two important facts that make them to have more understanding or more significance in various aspects. So this is a picture or image that what is shown here. It represents the bacteria which are present on the tip of a pin. So this at a different magnifications it is given. So this just to provide an information that they are present everywhere and they are extremely abundant and diverse also. So the abundance and the diversity. So these are the two important things. But the importance is that the problem here is that these are present on the tip of a pin. So the pin may not have any like a direct interaction, just like a living system here. So, but the fact is that they are distributed everywhere. So at the time of studying their distribution and abundance, the question comes. And also we know that they are present everywhere. So when studies were conducted by comparing the organisms which are present in the natural, present naturally, and by comparing the organisms which are which we can get cultured. So this is an experiment. You can see that this is a total organisms which were observed directly under microscope, and these are the organisms which are cultured in like a culture media. So when we compare the total number of organisms which are present in the natural sample and also the number of organisms which are getting culturable. So when they compare these two, it would observe that only limited number of organisms could be cultured, or only limited number of organisms are culturable. Even though this many number of organisms are present in the natural condition, only limited organisms are there that we can culture or in a way that we can study. So this phenomenon is a great plate count anomaly. So that means when we culture the organism, only limited number of organisms can be cultured. So from this one, it became understood that more than 99% of our organisms, or microorganisms which are present on the earth, are unculturable with the non-culturing techniques. Even though the culturing methods are developed for many different organisms, the fact is that majority of the organisms cannot be cultured. So why we have to study the unculturable organism, that is important, or why we cannot culture them, that is also important. We cannot culture them due to many reasons, like they may have complex nutritional requirement, they may require the presence of other bacterial species or other organisms, sensitivity to culture condition, unknown conditions for growth, and other many factors. And why we have to study this organism? Because what we know is from just less than 1% of organisms. Even though we are utilizing their application for many different applications, like their enzymatic, biosynthetic, metabolic, or genomic features or potential are used for different applications. What we utilize is only from the knowledge that we generated from less than 1% of organisms. So much of the knowledge, much of the information, much of the application, much of the possibilities are there which are unexplored. That is the basic problem here. So now the question comes, how we can get the information from the unknown. So it is almost impossible to culture all the organisms, but how we can get the information from them without culturing. So here came the importance of cultivation independent techniques. That means the methods which are not using the traditional culturing, but these are cultivation independent techniques. Here no need to culture the cells, but only to get the genetic information. So here comes the evolution of the so-called metagenomics, the area called metagenomics. So as I explained earlier, the early steps in microbiology developed, microscopes and methods for culturing the organisms developed, and this area developed parallelly. Along with that one, the basis of genetics, molecular biology, and that also developed. And that ultimately led to the establishment of the so-called area called the metagenomics. So now what is the metagenomics that we are coming to discuss now? This is the application of modern genomics techniques to study the communities of microorganisms directly in their natural environment, bypassing the need for isolation and lab cultivation of independent organisms or individual organisms. So here the genomic analysis is used to study the entire community of microorganisms. So sorry for the interruption. So here comes the metagenomics. It is the application of modern genomics to study communities of microorganisms. So what are the basic features or what are the basic components that we are analyzing in a metagenomic study is summarized here. That is, first one is about the diversity of the organism, to study what are the microorganisms present. Second is about functions of microorganisms, so what they are doing, and then how they are associated. So these are the different different applications that we have carried out here. So these are the basic steps involved in a metagenomic study. So it will start with the collection of DNA sample, DNA isolation, DNA processing, sequencing, and analysis of sequence data by bioinformatic tools. So these are the series of steps which are involved in a typical metagenomic study. So when we conduct the metagenomics, basically it is meant to study microbial community. So when we again come to the concept of microbial community, a community can be a natural community, that can be in the case of a soil or plant or environmental sample, or a host associated community, that can be a living system like human or plant, animals, or like that, or a managed community. That means a community which are like a community like of microorganisms from a condition like a sea-based treatment or like that. So from this one, we are now moving to the term microbiome. So what is a microbiome? It's the totality of microbes, their genetic elements or genome, and their environmental interaction in a particular environment. So when we compare the microbial community in a host with respect to a host, it is a host microbial interaction. For example, in the case of human, if we compare it as the microorganism associated with the human, this is human microbiome. When we compare this as when we study the microorganisms present in the skin, it is skin microbiome. When we study the microorganisms present in the intestine, it is gut microbiome. So this microbiome means it's a totality of microbes. That means total microorganisms present in that particular region, their genetic elements or genome, and the environmental interaction. So unlike the previous image where the microorganisms which are present on the surface of a tin was represented. In the case of a living system, the interaction of microorganism with this living system, it will give much information, and there are many things we have to learn from such interaction. So first question is why microbial association is there. That means in the case of host-associated microbial community, why the microbial interaction is there with the host, and up to what extent this association is there, and how many microorganisms are present. So all these complex questions are coming, but it seems to be very simple that microorganisms are present in human or microorganisms are present in plant. It seems to be very simple, but actually we are just beginning to explore the complexity of this. And for the analyzing the details of this one, the significance of this one, we will discuss mainly about two components: plant microbiome, human microbiome, and then we will see how they are interrelated also based on some of the recent understanding. So in the case of human or plant or any living system, that we know that there is a basic genome is present for its functioning, for coding the function, to make it survive, for providing the its existence also. But the question is that whether the genome itself can code all the functions to make it adaptable to the environment, to make it survive. So it seems to be impossible because there are many other factors are also important. And here comes the interaction or importance of interaction with the other genome directly or indirectly, and especially with interaction with the microbial genome. So now we are first going to discuss about the plant microbiome. That means this basically discuss about microbial basis of plants and its application. So as we know, the microorganisms have complex association with the plant system. Actually, even though we are considering the plant to be in the soil, but actually we can consider that we are not in soil, but in a pool of microorganisms. So these microorganisms perform very important functions in plant system, and even we can say them as, we can consider them, or we can give the like a status as plant's second genome also. And these organisms are present everywhere. They are playing very important role. This is like microorganisms which are present at the rhizosphere is represented here. That means the surface of the root, and even though the root is present in the soil, from the soil reserve, large number of microorganisms can come and interact with the surface of the root, and this interaction is mediated by some of the chemicals released from the plant system also, and they provide a selective environment for some of the organisms to come to this region, and some of the organisms are permitted to enter into the plant system also. That's also very important. And through this interaction, now the question is how plants are benefited. Because basically this interaction is not meant for any simple entry or simple surface. It is not providing a simple surface, but it is providing a large variety of functions that we can see now also. So this is the interaction of organisms which are present on the surface of the leaf. We can see these organisms can produce different types of pigments, different types of plant growth hormones, and also they produce variety of polysaccharides, and also they produce different biosurfactants, plant hormones, and so on. And also the representation is more clear that this is the interaction of microorganisms with the plant system. You can see the variety of functions provided by the microorganism, especially bacteria. So they can produce, the interaction of this bacteria with the plant system can induce the resistance mechanisms by induce systemic resistance. They can mediate the solubilization and make the availability of nutrients to the plant system. They can produce variety of organic compounds which are volatile in nature, which provide plant beneficial feature, and also they can produce the plant hormone. And these plant hormones produced by microorganisms are given to the plant system. So they act in combination with the hormones produced within the plant system to provide the actual function. And also these organisms can have regulatory effect on the stress response in the plant, because as we know, the ethylene is a stress hormone, and its precursor ACC is kept under control by the enzyme ACC-DMNA is produced by the microorganisms. So these indicate that the microorganisms are playing very important role in the case of plant system. And this is an example for the Streptomyces, which is well known for the production of antibiotics. And this organism is well studied for the antibiotic production. But actually, this organism is now identified to promote a large number of plant beneficial features also. So even though we are studying the organism for a particular application or purpose that we are interested, but naturally it is having a variety of other functions also. And this is a range of functions mediated by microorganisms within the plants. You can see that the epiphytic microbes are there, organisms which are present on the surface, organisms present on the surface of the root, rhizosphere organism, then organisms which are present within the plant system, endophytic organisms. So they perform a large variety of functions which ultimately make the plant to survive in the soil. And even the so-called properties like phytoremediation or bioremediation. So you can see a list of terms mentioned here like phytofiltration, phytosequestration, phytocivilization, phytoimmobilization, phytomining. So all these properties or all these properties which are studied for the plant system are actually supported by microorganisms in a variety of ways through their enzymes and metabolites also. So all the functions in the plant system is basically supported by the plant, these microorganisms. So this table gives a list of microorganisms which are isolated from some of the medicinal plants. And here the list indicates that these medicinal plants are well known for the production of a variety of compounds which are well known for anti-cancer drugs. Actually, these plants, these are the host plants, and these host plants are well known for the production of a variety of anti-cancer metabolites which are produced from these plants. But actually, recently a large number of fungi were isolated from all these plants, and these fungi, these are the, for example, Taxus brevifolia, the host plant, produces the taxol. But at the same time, the endophytic fungi Trichomyces andriani, isolated from this plant, is also identified to produce taxol. Like that, we could identify a large variety of medicinal products actually present in the plant are also produced or characterized to be produced by the microorganisms which are isolated from the host plant also. So why this association is there? So whether the organism, whether these fungi are the ones which are meant for the majority of production or major production, whether plant, fungi, both are producing this one, the complexity of this one is again, these are very complicated, but still there is a shared biosources in the sense these organisms are also producing, plant is also producing. So by identifying such beneficial aspects, we can make use of these organisms for a variety of applications. That is the one. So by studying the microorganisms, we can have many different applications, like we can make use of the microorganisms for different applications like rhizoengineering, or we can isolate the organisms, we can manipulate them in different ways, we can study them, we can make use of this for increasing the plant and productivity. And that is also very important because the methods which are used to enhance the productivity of plant is very important, because the currently used methods are, as we know, a variety of agrochemicals are used, and these agrochemicals are proved to be harmful to the environment, harmful to the plants, harmful to the humans also. So at that time, we need to have more sustainable method, natural method to enhance agricultural productivity. And here comes ultimate dependence to the microorganisms to make use of their properties. So with that one, we are now just moving to some of the work that we are carrying out here as School of Biosciences, and some of the interesting results are shown here. This is a report. This is a particular study that we carried out with the piperin producing fungi from Piper nigrum. So in this study, what we could identify that we could isolate piperin producing fungi from Piper nigrum, and that was characterized by LCMS also. And these fungi, when isolated from Piper nigrum, was introduced into the rice plant, that we could identify some morphological difference also. And actually, the fungus was isolated from Piper nigrum. It was confirmed for piperin production. It was introduced into the rice plant, and in the rice plant, it was found to enhance the growth. At the same time, when we screened this plant for piperin, we could identify piperin from this plant. That means the fungus isolated from here is pollinating this one in the rice plant, providing beneficial plant growth promoting property. At the same time, it is enhancing it is having piperin production also we could detect from this plant. So that is, so just like a genetic transformation method, the plant is now getting another property through the fungus. It is through the, it is the fungus which is producing the pepperin here, and it is just like a simple method for the genetic transformation. And this is another study that we could isolate a series of fungi. Actually, we could isolate 3 fungi from Ophiorhiza mangus, and these fungi were confirmed for the camdothysin production. So camdothysin, as we all know, it's a well-known medicinal natural product, and here in this study we could isolate 3 fungi from this plant, and these 3 fungi were found to produce camdothysin. And this is another plant where we studied, that is Bacopa moneri, that we all know. And here also we isolated almost 24 fungi from this plant. And among the 24 fungi that we screened, we could identify 1 fungus to have the ability to produce the bacopposite, the active component present in the plant. So this is another application that we carried out with some of the beneficial bacteria that we isolated from Western Ghats. So in the case of banana, it is a well-known plant which is where tissue culture methods are used. And one important step in the tissue culture before supplying this to the farmers is a hardening period. And generally, it used to take 6 to 8 weeks for the hardening. But in this study, what happened is that when we treated the hardening plants, the plants at the hardening stage were treated with the bacteria that we isolated from Western Ghats, we could identify that the hardening period is found to get reduced from 10 weeks to 5 weeks or 5 to 6 weeks. So that provided much application to the tissue culture industry. And this is another experiment where we could isolate endophytic bacteria. So bacteria, a large number of bacteria we could isolate from the rhizome of ginger. And these bacteria were screened for the presence of different antifungal compounds. And our purpose here was to make use of this bacteria for the management of rhizome rot disease in ginger. And this is a representation of a particular organism. It's a Pseudomonas species and was found to provide the antifungal activity through the production of phenazine carboxylic acid. And here another fungus which was isolated from the ginger. You can see that these are the different plants which were treated with. This is a plant which was treated with the fungus isolated from ginger, and this is a plant which was treated with the commercial trichoderma, and this is a control plant. And when compared to the commercial trichoderma, we can see much improved growth parameters are there for the plants which are treated with the fungus isolated from the ginger. So this is another important result that we could get by using the bacteria isolated from the turmeric. So from the turmeric, from the Curcuma longa rhizome, we could isolate again large number of bacteria. And one bacterium here was found to have remarkable inhibition to the pathogens that we screened. And this organism was subjected to detailed study. And then it was subjected to whole genome sequencing also. And we could identify that this is a Bacillus species. And at the same time, this Bacillus species was found to provide very interesting property here, drought tolerance. Because here we isolated the organism from not from fresh rhizome. The rhizome was processed in such a way that it kept for drying for a particular period. And what we expected here is that over the period of drying, only those organisms which can tolerate the drought-tolerant organisms may be selectively present there. So our expectation was correct because this organism was found to provide drought tolerance to the plant here. So this is a control plant. You can see that these were drought sensitive, but this is the same plant which was treated with this particular bacteria where the plant was found to get protected from drought condition. And at the same time, this organism was also found to protect the plant from disease also. So this is both the plants were challenged with pathogen, and but this plant was treated with bacteria, so it got protected. And here we can see the disease in the control plant. So this provide interesting properties of organisms which are present within the plant. So again, this is application of Pseudomonas species that we isolated from Western Ghats. And these are the control plants which are found to get infected, but these bacteria-treated plants, along with some nanomaterials, we can found to have disease protection or provide protection to the plant system. And this is another study that we isolated the bacteria from the picture of the plant. So here, the Nepenthes amblac plant from this one, we could we isolated some bacteria from this picture, and they were screened for antifungal property. They were identified for antifungal metabolites also. So you can see that when this bacteria was treated with this tomato and challenged with pathogen, you can see that the bacteria treated fruits were protected from the pathogen, and here you can see the fruit rot caused by the pythium. Like that, the infection also, here the control plants were infected, but the plants which were treated with this bacteria were found to get protected with the improved growth parameters. So these are the some of the business work that we carry out here. So this is just to give an idea about the importance of the organisms which are present within the plant itself. So naturally, these group of plants or microbial communities which are present in these plants are providing functions which make the plant system to survive under changing conditions, changing environmental conditions, under the biotic, to manage the abiotic and biotic stress, to mobilize nutrients and so on. So this is just to give an overall idea about how the microorganisms which are present within the plant are important. So now coming to the next part of our discussion is about the human microbiome. So human microbiome, basically, as it's mentioned, just to study the microbial basis of human. And can we have any microbial basis? That's a question. Or microbial contribution to human. So far, or now we are in a particular stage where we are highly challenged with the microorganisms in various ways. All of us now are aware of microorganisms, its importance, and up to what level that we are sensitive also. So in this condition, it is very important to know some of the aspects about the beneficial aspects also, in the sense that's why the microbial basis of humans. So here comes some of the very interesting results. So when we discuss about the plants and its microbial association, and those things that is already known, because microbial interaction or microbial association is already known from different point of view. But in the case of human, most of the information about the microorganisms, they are just recently introduced, because this is the basically due to the problem that I discussed in the introductory part with respect to the difficulty in culturing the organism. So we were focused mainly towards pathogenic organisms or those organisms which cause disease, and at the same time the beneficial organisms are largely ignored because most of them are not in a culturable state. So the information from these were not available. But now with the development of new generation sequencing technologies, and it became easy for isolating the DNA from different organisms, and at the same time it became very easy for getting the information from the DNA, environmental DNA or meta DNA, or in the sense human microbial DNA, it became very easy. So microbiome, especially human microbiome, is now a new fashion. So we are just going to see some of the things which are very important. At the same time, some of these things are unbelievable also. So human microbiome, basically it deals with the studies on microorganisms which are present in human. So why or where these organisms are present? Because as I mentioned earlier, we are now aware of some of the things because we are challenged with some of the microorganisms. So then only we know this one. But actually these are present everywhere, because there are millions of microbes per inch of our body. Thousands of different species are present on the skin. And the fact is that there are more microbial cells are present in our body than our human cells. So this is a estimated list of organisms per gram of based on different studies. They calculated also the number of organisms. You can see the distribution of organisms present in different parts of the body. So these different organisms which are present in different parts of the body are now known for their diversity also, because different organisms are present predominantly in different parts of the body, because Streptococcus dominates in the oral cavity, Staphylococcus in the external body sides. So Lactobacillus predominate in the vagina. E. coli is present in the gut of a majority of healthy subjects, and bacteroids are also present. So this is a diversity map of human microbiome.
Hello, sir.
വിളിക്കാവോ ശരീരത്തിനെ പറ്റി?
ഞാൻ വിളിക്കാം.
Sorry for the interruption. So there was a network problem.
Okay.
So this is the diversity of organisms that we are characterized from humans, different parts of humans. You can see a large number of organisms, different species. They were distributed and studied in different parts of the body. So based on this importance of human microbiome, the International Initiative of Human Microbiome Project also initiated. And this mainly studies microorganisms which are present in the nasal cavity, oral cavity, skin, gastrointestinal tract, and also urogenital tract to identify the commensal organisms present here, to know their beneficial functions and how to make use of this one. That are the main objectives here. So based on some of these studies, they project that there can be a core human microbiome in human. That means all humans can have some sort of microorganisms which are common to us. And at the same time, there can be variable human microbiome. That means a type of microorganisms which are present in all of us, which are variable. That means from person to person, they can vary. That will depend on many factors like post genotype, post physiology, post immune system, like that. Many factors are there. So now what we understood is about microorganisms present in human. When we compare human with microorganism, is this one. Actually, it is considered that we have more microbial genes than our own genome. That means a human is considered to be contributed by both of these, or the functioning of the human is contributed by the human genome that is represented by this circle, and a significantly higher fold and many-fold of functions which are coded or contributed by the microbiome which are present in the human. So this human microbiota is considered as our extended genome, and there are many representations to provide this one. You can see that a cartoon representation here, that actually for a human, only this much cell, that means by a percentage wise, functional percentage wise is represented. Only limited number function is contributed by the human genome, and the majority of the functions are provided by the genome of microorganisms. So there are many interesting studies are coming with the microbial distribution, microorganism diversity present in different parts of the body. And also we can see that this is basically meant to study the relative amount of different microorganisms present in different parts of the body. So the predictions are coming in such a way that you can see the importance of the microorganisms present in human. That humans harbor a large number of microorganisms, and it is considered that 90% of human cells are microbial. In the sense, more microorganisms are present within the human. If you compare the total number of cells of human with the total number of microbial cells associated with the human, we can see a large contribution is from microorganisms. And also, if you compare a person-to-person variation, there can be, if you compare one person with another, 99.9% of the genome will be similar. But if you compare a person with another person for its microbiome, only 10 to 20% of this microbiome will be same or similar. That means, can we correlate some of the difference of one person to another with this microbiome? Because from the genome, only limited change is there, and that too very limited. But here, if you compare two individuals, there can be 10 to 20% difference is only 10 or 10 to 20% of microbiome will be the same. Majority of the microbiome will be different from this person to this person. And you can see that large number of organisms, more microbial cells, and high variability from individual to individual. So these are some of the recent interesting things. And what they function for us, because that is the most important thing. It's not simply present just like in the case of equine that I mentioned in the introductory slides. They provide a large number of functions like a promotion of many fat storage and a large number of functions which are basically essential for the functioning of the human system. So this human microbiome is our extended genome, which is performing a large variety of functions, and even they could identify many microbial clades which are different between male and female. So male to female difference also is found to have microorganisms which are present in some are found to be unique to male and some are found to be unique to female. So now the question is from where these microorganisms are coming to human, or at what stage the microorganisms are getting introduced. Because as I mentioned in the introductory slide, in the case of plant, they are in the soil. So always they are in contact with microorganisms, or they are in the pool of microorganisms. But in the case of human, from where it comes and at what stage. So our microbiome depends on how we are delivered. So from the first day so many different processes in the like at the time of birth itself can have a determining effect on the microbial introduction to human. So you can see many studies are coming recently that the nature of birth. So this is a vaginal infants kept more operational taxonomic units, more diversity of microorganisms are present in individuals where the normal delivery is there. So here the establishment of the microbiome in human, you can see that by comparing from the time of birth to the age 1 to 3 years, then to adult. So microbial diversity increasing from the birth to the year of first year, gradually the diversity is increasing, and the diversity is becoming established by the age of 1 to 3 years, and then gradually to adult. So many factors are there which contribute. So natural factors are there, then the nature of feed or feeding, whether breastfeed or bottle feed, then the environmental factors are also there. So maternal factors are more important here because they influence infants' colonization. So variety of factor, skin, gut, vaginal communities of maternal microbial communities present in the skin, gut, vaginal communities. All these can have determining effect on introducing the microbial community to the newborn. So all these different parts are getting more studied recently now, that oral microbiome, placenta microbiome, vagina microbiome, skin microbiome, gut microbiome, because all these are getting connected to different types of conditions, clinical conditions. So whether these clinical conditions are some relation to the microbial community present here, that in the sense whether the altered microbial community can lead to this condition, or whether the altered condition result in altered microbial community. But still, in many of these cases, there could be association with the microbial community and these diseases or conditions which are mentioned for these different parts. So, in the case of gut microbiome, so a large number of functions are related. So it is just like the second brain, the gut microbiome functions because many factors like genetic factor, exercise, stress, antibiotic use, age, gastric mobility, the nature of food that we consume. So all these can have a complex interaction with the microorganisms present in the gut. And the microbial functioning in the gut is very important because it can ultimately determine our response to many different components, many conditions also. Because all these conditions that gut microbiome is found to get affected, influenced by, or they can have different types of influence on obesity, cystic fibrosis, inflammatory bowel disease, use of antibiotics. So all these conditions can have different influence on gut microbiome. And also gut microbiome can have impact on making the conditions severe or normal also. So the gut microbiome, the importance of the gut microbiome. So major bacteria were characterized from this gut microbiome, include firmicutes, bacteroids, proteobacteria, etc. These are the major organisms identified from this one. And when we get aged, also it is considered that there is a gradual change in our microbial community. So whether these changes in microbial community is again responsible for some of the conditions by which the aged person become more susceptible to some of the diseases. So whether we can make use of some of the beneficial organism to manage some of these conditions. These are some of the important things getting recently discussed again. So this is another study where microbiome in early life, its implication for health outcome has been studied. And they suggest that there is a Christensensiaceae is a relatively newly described bacterial family, and it is considered that it is heritable. That means it is transferred from mother to fetus here. So you can see that the different factors, how from mother to child to the converting to different stages, how they influence the microbial community. So the gut microbiota of the mother, the vaginal infection, and even other conditions like periodontitis, these conditions can have determining effect on the microbial community which are get exposed to the newborn. Then the birth stages, different factors are involved. Then diet, antibiotic, all these factors are now can have a determining effect. So many studies are coming in such a way. You can see that the long-lasting effect of early life interaction. So this can this is a comparison of how the microbial interaction is beneficial to the intestinal function. So this is a prenatal colon. You can see that the normal colon here. And two conditions are given here. This is a microbial homeostasis is there. This is a postnatal colon where dysbiosis is there. That means altered microbial interaction. Here, normal microbial interaction. So, normal microbial interaction means the beneficial organisms are there. They provide the intestinal system activated, provide immunologically active intestinal system is provided here. But here, when the microbial interaction is changed, there is a dysbiosis will take place, and that will make the intestinal system more susceptible to attack by pathogen. So the conditions will change. And also from this one, the concept of microbiome mediated therapeutics is also evolving. That means can we make use of some of these beneficial organisms to manage some of the conditions as mentioned here. If there is a dysbiosis, can we make use of some of the beneficial bacteria to manage this one? So they suggest that the bacteria, different conditions like a preclinical stage or early stage or late stage can be, especially preclinical, can be managed by bacterial inoculation. And in the case of a late stage, after the antibiotic treatment also, microbial transplantation can be given to make the condition. Because we can see that this is the intestinal epithelial cells, this is the mucin layer, and which provide a barrier to here. And when normal microbial interaction or when the microbial homeostasis is there, the normal function, the normal mucin will be retained. But when there is a dysbiosis is taking place, this mucin layer will get damaged so that pathogens will come and attack here. So such things can be managed by use of beneficial organisms. So the gut bacterial composition displayed specific signature and was observed to be influenced by the topographical location and dietary intake of the individual. So when we analyze what are the factors determine the microbiome composition of human, there are many factors are there. And the microbial community again can be symbiotic organism, commensal organism, and the pathogenic organism also. So the balance can be changed to whether it is kept under normal or whether the pathogens will become the dominant one will be determined by many factors. And there are food, dietary intake, and underlying conditions, clinical conditions, many factors can determine this balance, and ultimately that will lead to a condition whether it will be a normal or a diseased condition. So based on this one, the gut microbiota in the first decade of life, studies on this one suggest identification diet-based approaches targeting individuals in this age group to promote development of a healthy microbiota in later life. So by identifying the importance of these beneficial microorganisms, so beneficial microorganisms can be it can be recommended to have more interaction with the beneficial microorganisms by providing such diet, so that the person will become healthy because of the healthy microbiota. So there are many studies are emerging, and they suggest that the key bacterial types at different stages of 1,000 days contribute to healthy versus unnourished growth. So this is a healthy growth. This is unnourished growth. Healthy, you can see that as mentioned, the normal healthy microbiome will be there, and this healthy microbiome introduction into the newborn will be determined by many factors, but here the pathogens may overrule here. So the diet is now identified how important a role. You can see that varied diet, or the diet which we can say healthy diet, that can provide interaction with a healthy microorganism, so that the intestinal or gut functions will be kept normal, so that it will be immunologically active and will be so-called healthy. But at the same time, the insufficient diet or which are not rich in microorganisms, we can say that they may not favor the existence of normal microbiome. So microbial dysfunctioning can happen here, and so that it will change to a diseased condition. So there can be, you can see the window of susceptibility and opportunity here. That means at what stage the microbiome diversity is enhancing. And recent study indicate that from the birth to almost 3 years, that period may be highly microbial diversity is increasing at those stages. And so the microbial and immune homeostasis will be maintained by means of these beneficial microorganisms. And promoters of microbial homeostasis, they include maternal probiotic, neonatal probiotic, vaginal delivery, vaginal swabbing-based studies identified this one. Then here, you can see that the changes in any of these conditions can lead to this altered condition. So deviation from the microbial homeostasis can make the person susceptible to immune-mediated diseases, and many of these diseases are now trying to get identified to have some microbial basis. So a greater understanding of how early stage microbiota impact our immune development could potentially lead to novel microbial-derived therapies that target disease prevention at early stage. So you can see here the represented circles represent different microbial communities, and difference in color is the changes in microbial community with respect to different age group. You can see here. So while such studies are important, because identifying the major microbial communities which are providing beneficial effect at different stages can make use of, by identifying such things, we can make use of such microbial community for managing in diseased conditions to make the person more healthy. So from the birth to about 3 years, we can see inter-individual variability in microbial diversity is getting reduced. But here you can see bacterial diversity is getting increased here. Bacterial diversity is getting increased from birth to 2 to 3 years. So another recent study indicate that maternal stress and microbial transmission in early programming and neurodevelopment. So changes, so you can see these are some of the reports from the animal studies that indicate that environmental changes, that means stress induction during the pregnancy can alter the microbiota or maternal microbiota. So maternal stress which cause changes in microbiota that can have influence on the newborn. So altered microbial community in neonatal gut influences its fermentation, digestion, and absorption of metabolite. So these metabolic processes of microorganisms which are happening within the gut at the early stage are very essential for the neuronal development, and disruption of gut delivered metabolites may alter neurodevelopment process in the newborn, so that the maternal stress and thereby the altered microbial community can significantly influence the newborn also. So based on this one, such importance of microorganisms for the beneficial effect of the human, the microbiota interventions are also now investigated. That means what are the stages where we can intervene in such a way that if there is not beneficial, if the beneficial microorganisms are not present there, can we introduce beneficial microorganisms there to manage such conditions? So many studies are also coming in such a way. You can see from the conception to birth to different stages of life. So you can see that some of these stages are considered where microbial intervention is possible, so that the person can become healthy, even though some disease conditions or symptoms are emerging. So now the conditions are coming in such a way that the exposome, foodome, microbiome, all these, because the environmental conditions that the person is exposed, the nature of the food the person is exposed, and ultimately all this can have determining effect to see whether there whether there will be normal microbiome composition is there or altered microbiome composition is there, which will ultimately determine the health status. So here is another interesting study from, you can see that microbiota transfer from twins discordant for obesity. So these were twins, and they differ in the obesity. So when the microorganism were collected from this person and introduced into the mice became obese. But in the case, you can see that from this one, from the lean person, the microbiome collected or microorganisms collected and introduced in the mice was slim. So these very interesting results are coming. So you can see here the report here, the same thing. So this is a obese tin, this is a lean tin, microbiota collected from both and introduced into the mice, and you can see that both were fed in a normal way, and here increased adiposity is there. Here the mice was clean. So now the question whether actually the microorganism is the one which is responsible for the obese nature here, and if so, is it possible as to manage these microorganisms to change this person from obese to lean condition? So such things are very important. So gut microorganisms or gut flora are playing very important role in many of the functions, and even the behavioral aspects also. Microorganisms are considered to play a very important role, and even in many of the psychological and psychiatric conditions also, behavior of the person also, changes in microbial communities are getting observed. So it is considered that you can see normal human microflora of the skin can even be highly sensitive also, because inhospitable environment, gram-positive organisms can predominate. So there can be fine interaction with respect to the physiological condition of the host is also there for the microorganisms. So changes in condition, changes in the temperature, changes in the pH, and changes in the hormonal composition, many factors of the host can determine whether which community should be dominant at a particular period, and thereby the functioning of the community can make the person healthy, normal, or unhealthy condition. So there is the importance of gut-brain axis also studied, because you can see that some of the studies indicate that blood flow and the functioning of the brain. So there is so-called the function is executed through the gut-brain axis. So because when the physiological or controlled inflammation or normal condition means, it is considered that a group of stable microflora, or so-called normal microflora, when present, it will mediate a controlled inflammation, or it will result in a normal condition, so that the normal functioning of the brain will be there. But when the microbial composition is altered, so that the intestinal function is also get disordered, so there will be increase in physiological inflammation, and thereby the changes in the functioning of the brain. So the abnormal gut physiology can interfere the functioning of the brain. So now again the question here comes whether the stress condition or the functioning of the brain is the one which changes the microbial community, or the microbial community is the one which is changes in microbial community is the one which is responsible for this one. So whatever the way, whatever the route it is executed, the question again is that can we reintroduce some of the beneficial organism into the host so that the normal functions can be regained. So such studies are very important to identify the beneficial effect of this organism. And another important thing is metagenomics of the human colon microbiome. Because many of the polysaccharides that we consume, we do not have the enzymatic means to digest them or metabolize them. And most of these microbial enzymes are there, which is there to mediate the digestion and the metabolic process of this one. Because the plant polysaccharides we consume are rich in silane, pectin, and arabinose containing carbohydrate structure. The human genome lacks most of the enzymes required for degrading these glycans, and these functions are provided by the microbiome. Just like the gut-brain axis discussed, now with the emerging viral respiratory infection, the importance of gut-lung axis also getting discussed. So here is a report in 2021. You can see the lung-gut axis during viral respiratory infection, the impact of gut dysbiosis on secondary disease outcome. It is published in Mucosal Immunology. You can see that the role of gut microbiota in viral respiratory infection, because the factor is released by the healthy gut microbiota. Different types of lipopolysaccharides, short chain fatty acids, and other metabolites from the gut microbiota are known to provide lung immunity by interfering or promoting or supporting the immunologically active cells and molecules. And so there will be a controlled viral or bacterial infection. But when there is a change in microbial community here, or dysbiotic microbial community is there, it can alter the lung immunity, or defective response will be there, so that uncontrolled viral and bacterial infection can be there. So the underlying conditions, which may change the microbial community may be some of the reasons which make the person more susceptible to the disease. So is it correct with all the conditions that we have to study? The role of the factors released by healthy gut microbiota harm the lungs against viral respiratory infection. In contrast, antibiotic treatment disturbs psychological equilibrium in the gut and alter lungs defense. Aging and comorbidities are also associated with the altered gut microbiota function. So here is another representation of the same thing, where the gut-lung axis during viral respiratory infection is represented. And here also it is considered that the normal gut function, so is the one which provide the support to the viral infection. And another paper you can see gut microbiota and the COVID-19 possible link and implication. So presence of gut microbiota, it can have a balanced effect on the immune homeostasis. So the immunological homeostasis can make the person either susceptible or resistant, or whether the severity of the condition will be determined by the immune status of the person. And determining this immune status or homeostasis is a major determinant here is the gut microbiota. And the functioning of the gut microbiota in a normal manner to provide anti-inflammatory response can make the person like underreactive immune response will be there when the condition is changed. So you can see the gut microbiota role in changing the immune homeostasis to make the person overreactive immune response or underreactive immune response. So the same thing is represented here also, normal state and altered state for vulnerable organisms. So do an altered gut microbiota and an associated leaky gut affect COVID-19 severity. That is another recent information coming. So the observation here is that altered gut microbiota and leaky gut may act as a crucial factor on COVID-19 severity. So you can see what the leaky gut means here. So this is a normal gut. You can see healthy gut where healthy microbiota is present. And when healthy microbiota is present, they are producing different types of metabolites, and also they are providing colonization-mediated functions so that the intestinal layer will be kept more healthy, so that it will block the inflammatory response. Unnecessary activation of the inflammatory response will be blocked here. But here you can see that in the case of inflamed or leaky gut, that means where microbial microbiome dysbiosis is there, so that beneficial organisms are getting reduced, so that the intestinal epithelium become more susceptible in such a way that the virus can enter through this one and activate the inflammatory response during the secondary stages, thereby making the condition more severe. Especially it is more observed with the elderly or those with underlying conditions, including hypertension, diabetes, and obesity. And in this condition, such microbiome associated disease is also there, which can make the person more susceptible to this condition. But in this case, in the case of young or those without underlying medical condition, healthy microbiome is there, which can prevent this type of complicated conditions in the secondary stages. So another report on is gut microbiota dysbiosis a predictor of increased susceptibility to poor outcome of COVID-19 patient. So many studies are again coming. That means when they compare the COVID-19 patient with a better prognosis of asymptomatic and poor outcome, they could identify a large number of microorganisms associated with both conditions. Normal healthy microbiome with a different microbial profile, and with the altered microorganisms with a different profile. And in this condition, this is found to mediate the cytokine storm and immune hyperresponse. And whether this size type of alteration and how we can make use of some of these alterations are very important. So from this one, the so-called normal state is of our body, or so-called health of our body, is determined by many factors, especially the host factors and the complex microbiota. It is determined mainly by these two factors, host factors and the complex microbiota. And keeping this one in a balanced state is very important to make the person or make the life healthy, because both of them interact in a normal manner or beneficial manner to keep the person as a healthy manner. So now the question is how we can make such condition more possible. So we have to learn more about how the microbial introduction is taking place in our body. So far we discussed about, in the first part we discussed about plant microbiome. In the second part we discussed about human microbiome. And now the question is, is there any relation? Can we relate any of these things? So, because the ultimate source for most of these microbial candidates for human is a plant microbiome. So when we consider the pre-industrial and industrial stages or era, we can see that in the earlier case, soil microbiome directly to plant microbiome. So now the question is, humans are getting most of these microorganisms from plants. Plants are getting most of this from soil. So the ultimate source of this one is the soil. So in the pre-industrial period, the soil microbiome diversity was more, so that the plant microbiome diversity was more, and also humans were getting more beneficial organisms. So again, from the human to human transmission of beneficial microorganisms were also there at that time. And also from environment to human to environmental or soil transfer of microorganisms are also there. So now with the industrial period, what happened is that there is a richness or diversity reduction in microbiome is there. So that you can see that now other stages or steps are coming, like different methods for cultivation of important plants, and also application of pesticides, which reduces diversity of soil and thereby diversity of plants and other food items. So again, the organisms which are present in the harvested plants are also getting reduced during the post-harvest storage processing stage. So we are getting the food in such a way that with a less number of microbial diversity, with a less number of beneficial organisms. And also human-to-human beneficial organism transfer is also restricted due to many other progresses or achievements. Okay, so human to environment transmission of microorganism is also getting reduced because of the lack of contact with environment or soil. So such changes that make us more susceptible to diseases because our diversity of natural microflora is getting reduced. So the soil contribute to human gut microbiome. So that is very important. Now the question is how to make more healthy. So now we are coming to the term like connecting the health of human with plant and then to soil. So recent reports are there that healthy soil for healthy plant for healthy human. So you can see the term healthy, healthy, healthy. So healthy soil is very essential for the healthy plants, and these healthy plants are very essential for a healthy human. So that is very important. So the direct and indirect effect of the plant microbiota and the human gut microbiome. So you can see the comparison between good health and fragile health reported in this paper here. Good health means there will be healthy food, there is a healthy gut microbiome. So to increase these things, we need to have sustainable agriculture procedure methods where the pesticides and agrochemical use should be minimized or reduced, and then only the plants become more diverse in their microbiome. So healthy soil means raising microbial diversity, and the plants growing in such soil will have much microbial diversity also. The other condition, if the soil is not healthy, that means less microbial diversity. The plants which are growing in this one will also be less in the microbial diversity. So that ultimately we are not getting beneficial microorganisms, so that we will become more fragile in condition or fragile health will be there. So this is most important. So when we have to go back to the origin of life, because actually the microorganisms were there as first established form, and now what we can see is that most of the functions are with them only. So even though other established systems are there, they are highly specialized systems in such a way that they can have specific function, but their function is ultimately determined by the specific microbial association and the connecting link, whether human, plant, soil, or any other living system, is through the microbiome. So the life that we see, anything is basically like a representation of microbiome, whether it is plant or animal or human, whatever it is the advanced representation of a microbiome can be the other established form of life. So now coming to how important this is with respect to India. Now we are coming to our country. So far we discussed about the diversity of human microbiome, importance of human microbiome, and then plant microbiome and so on. In the case of Indian population, we can see that we have 4,693 population groups are there, 2,205 major communities. So diversity is there with respect to different groups, population groups are there. They have genetic diversity, dietary changes, difference in geographic distribution, socioeconomic stratification, many different. So we can have different groups of humans in such a way that this gut microbiome of all these Indian population can be a black box, because we can have a better microorganisms with extremely beneficial functions. This can be in the gut of humans. So at the same time, we have to correlate these microbiome with our traditional practices, like Indian system of traditional medicine or Ayurvedic medicine. So whether these have some microbial basis, in the sense whether the treatment or method, whether it is meant to introduce some of the beneficial organism, or whether it is again supporting the functioning of some of the beneficial organisms. So whether we can have or there can have any such basis that we have to study. So our biodiversity provide us much opportunities to identify more organisms also. So along with the searching for drugs, or along with the searching for solutions for many conditions, it is equally important to search for microorganisms for also managing many of the conditions which can provide some of the easiest method to manage things naturally. So now coming to some of the opportunities of this one. So you can see that research groups in different areas are also studying in different aspects of beneficial products produced by human microbiota. So in the case of antibiotics and the other one, we are searching for different sources. We are searching for soil. We are searching for microorganisms from different sources for the bioactive metabolites. We are also searching for many plants for the bioactive metabolites. So is it possible that we can search human microbiome for some of the beneficial effects? So it's possible that in a study reported in 2016, you can see that Staphylococcus laguniensis, which was isolated from the nose, was found to produce a particular antibiotic which is active against nasally resistant Staphylococcus aureus. So human microbiome can be a potential source of either drugs or enzymes or metabolites or components for many of these acting against pathogen also. So another important application with respect to human microbiome that is identified is fecal microbiota transplantation because already it is identified that gut microbiome is very important for the health status of human. So is it possible that such information can be made use for studying some of the conditions? So here is a condition called fecal microbiome transplantation. That means the fecal material or the microorganisms collected from the fecal material of a healthy person can be a medicine to a person which is also. So fecal material can be collected and beneficial organisms can be collected from that one and through a simple processing step, and it can be applied to say fecal slurry to the donor in such a way that it is found to be very useful to manage some of the conditions like ulcerative colitis and other vital and other healthcare conditions also. So here what we can see here is that even the fecal material of a healthy person is also highly useful in such a way that it is having beneficial organisms which can be useful to another person. So other forensic application is also coming. Like some studies report that bacteria on your fingertip could identify. That means wherever we touch, it is considered that we used to leave some microorganisms which are present on the surface of our body. And these organisms can give just an information of our identity because it is just like our fingerprint. So can we make use of such thing for identifying a person who might have touched a particular surface? So such things are also coming now. So this term, the microbiome, now is used for advertising or commercializing or enhancing the acceptability of some of the products. So you can see a simple title here, the microbiome cookbook. So they are saying that this particular book is having the procedure to prepare the food which can nourish our gut health. So microbiome, they can nourish our microbiome. So it is getting identified or represented in various ways. And this is another important thing that we see that in 2016, the image from 2016, that the White House launched the National Microbiome Initiative for identifying the microbes in human, crop, soil, and the oceans and more. So this gives the international importance of this one. And also this is a report from Indian Science Congress in 2017, and where the scientists from the Indian Science Congress discussed the importance of microorganisms in the body to find a solution to various ailments. So globally, nationally, it is getting much discussed and much studied also. And also, microbiome companies attract big investment. That means it is another opportunity for much startups, much industry, and for exploring this microbiome application to identify some of the breakthroughs in medicine and agriculture, basically to improve the health of plants and improve the health of humans also. So we can say that we can identify again many products which are labeled as microbiome support. They are saying that these products can improve our microbiome functioning. Also, we can see that the microbiome bar. So many products are coming now labeled through microbiome. So a microbiome understanding is very essential. A detailed understanding is very essential. Just like we search for drugs or bioactive compounds or enzymes from any environmental or natural condition, it is equally important to search for beneficial organisms for humans from humans itself, because we all have these beneficial organisms. So can we make use of this some of the organism from the healthy person and to manage some of the conditions in a person where the normal treatment methods are not working. So whether it will be useful for some of the diseases, whether it is useful for some of the conditions like obesity, whether it is useful for some of the conditions like viral respiratory infections that we have to study. So the microbiome study will be, it is essential for a better life, and a better understanding will give a better opportunities for us, for ourselves. So future biology will ultimately depend on how we make use of the microorganisms, because they have the potential for everything. They have the potential to perform anything, manage anything, and solve anything. So ultimately, we have to depend them for the ultimate solution. So the future biology will ultimately depend on microbial study or microbiome. So now coming to our lab here, so myself from Mahatma Gandhi University School of Biosciences. So our research area are mainly functional biology of plant microbiome, environmental evolution of antimicrobial resistance, and antimicrobial applications of bio-nanocomposites. So we are supported for our studies very much from DBT, ICMR, and most of the program from KSCST, KCST-SAT, KCST-SRS, and also KCST, KBC, YIP for funding. And this is our achievements, and all are welcome for any type of interaction or collaboration or training. We are happy to collaborate with all for bringing more information, doing the best. And with these words, I express sincere thanks to Kerala Biotech Commission for providing an opportunity to share some of the recent understanding about microbiome. And thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for that very informative, enriching us with the importance of microorganisms and also the microbiome in general. While we realize the destructive nature of this microorganisms in recent times. And we have a couple of questions, I know 2 questions from your research area. Maybe I can, Arunan sir is asking, you said about the bacteria which is isolated from turmeric, that is helpful in helping the plant in drought tolerance. So how does it help in that, surviving that drought? What would be the mechanism?
Yeah, actually, the bacteria that we isolated from that dried rhizome, because we applied the logic in such a way that we collected the rhizome from the field and it was kept under drying for a different particular period. That means sun dried. So this dried material was collected for the bacteria isolation in such a way that we expect that during the process of drying, some of the sensitive organisms which were present during its like interaction with the soil might have removed, and only those which can tolerate the drought will be there. So that's why we selected and we conducted the plant studies and found to be very important organism. And in this case, we found this to produce first one is it is a spore-forming organism, and also it is found to produce a variety of metabolites, and we consider that these metabolites are some of the basis to provide the drought tolerance in this organism.
Okay, fine. Another question from your research is Jasmine. She's curious to know if any of the helpful organisms that you have isolated in your study have been commercialized, or they are in the process of commercialization.
Actually, this bacillus we started some interaction with the agri-biotech company ABTech, which is present in Kottayam, and we initiated some interaction also. But the major problem we have some limitations with like a direct field application of these organisms. So we need to have approval from regulatory authorities. So what we try now is to have some collaboration with industries so that such process can be minimized, and we initiated some interaction with ABTech also.
Sir, this is Jasmine. That session was very useful, and you were telling about the regulations and all. Since you have isolated these bacteria from natural source itself, right? So will there be that much problem? I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking to know
We are now working in a reverse direction also, because what we could identify in some of the studies that we are getting some pathogens also.
Okay.
So now we are one PhD student who is just going to start PhD with under me, and what we are interested in that work is to identify such pathogens from the plant source. And because the question is now again, I already mentioned in the case of Streptomyces. So in our studies, we are biased in such a way that we are seeing the organism in a particular point of view for our purpose.
Yes.
So pathogens that we consider as pathogen for human, but for plant, it may have some beneficial effect. So maybe plant is permitting such organism to present within them also. So before applying to the field, we should have a clear idea about it is whether it is pathogen or it is having another problem is with respect to antibiotic resistance. So now we are started to analyze some of the microbial genome for antibiotic resistance, because when we sequenced another Bacillus genome, in that case, that Bacillus was isolated from fruit of a plant, but we could identify some virulence properties in that one. So that's why we subjected that organism into whole genome sequencing, and we could identify that this is having a large number of toxins also, toxins and other virulence factors. So our logic to consider a beneficial one may not be the logic for the plant.
Yes.
It will be entirely different logic for the bacteria also.
You need to do more research on this.
Yeah, exactly. We cannot generalize anything from a microbial point of view.
Okay, thank you so much. It was really informative.
Thank you.
Thank you. And another question is regarding the pheromones from the microbes. So one is asking whether it influences the plant growth or disease, the pheromones from the microbes.
What we discuss is a plant hormone. What we discuss is a plant hormone, and this plant hormone it influences the plant growth significantly, because what we think now is that it will be the ultimate effect on the plant growth of the hormone will be determined by the concentration of the hormone produced by the plant, and also the contribution from the microorganism also. Based on that, contribution from microorganism, contribution from plant, and how it affect the balance in such a way that it will promote growth or that thing. So that is there. So what we can, because majority of the bacteria that we isolated from the plant were found to produce, especially IAA production is found to be a common property. And also recently we could identify that some pseudomonas are producing gibberellic acid also. And in that case, what we could identify that initially these were not found to produce the gibberellic acid, but when we induced the organism in some other under inducible nature, these were found to produce different types of hormones. So it is a highly complicated situation to know whether microbe is determining or plant is determining the ultimate growth, or when plant is need to have some help from for the growth from microorganism, whether it is recruiting from soil. So it is there is a highly sensitive and complex interaction is there, communication is there, and I think we just now have only a superficial information of all these things.
Another question from Sarang VS regarding the evolutionary point of view, how these beneficial microbes gets integrated with the human body.
How?
The beneficial microbes in the evolutionary point of view, how this beneficial microbes get integrated with the human body.
Yeah, I already like to discuss some of the things in the slide where the relation between ultimate source of this microorganism we can consider as the environment or soil, and from the soil there is a selection that the plant is selecting some organism, and there is a selection process that favor some of the organisms to get associated with this one. And this when we consume the food, ultimately again we can say that we are consuming a large community of microorganisms. So whether it is collected directly from the field or processed or whatever it is. So in another way, whatever the thing that we do is ultimately to enrich our microbial community, the food that we consume, or the water that we consume. So all the environment through the food is a major. So already mentioned that during the time of the birth, at the time of birth or during the time of pregnancy also, now it is getting considered that some microbial community transmission is there from mother to fetus. So that's the initial one. And then during the birth, then comes the environmental. So these are the major sources by which we are getting colonized by microorganisms.
Another question, probably, I don't know, regarding the current crisis, the use of sanitizer. Donna is asking, the use of sanitizer has shown increased skin disease, mainly the fungus. So is that due to the loss of normal flora or due to some chemical irritants present in that?
Yeah, the two things are very important. First one is the methods that we use. Another one is the isolation that we now adopt for to manage the situation. So this isolation itself make some changes in the microbial community, and also the method that we take, because now the crisis is in such a way that we have to take the methods in such a way to manage this viral disease. So when we prioritize that one, give importance to that one, the other factor will also be there. Automatically, in a long run, it will affect the skin. Healthy skin microbiota will be affected. Skin will become more sensitive to more, especially to more fungal infection, mostly.
Another question regarding the role of probiotics. To the role of probiotics in the context of microbe enhancement in our present lifestyle. Is it beneficial?
Yeah, exactly. In the probiotics, these are live microorganisms which are providing beneficial effect to the human, and especially in the intestinal or intestinal epithelial. At the intestinal epithelial level, they are well known to provide the so-called colonization resistance, and other beneficial effect is also there. But the problem here is that we have to identify. We have a risk source of such probiotics present within our population. So can we identify more probiotic organism from human or from plant or natural sources? So that would be some of the solutions which can manage the disease condition to a more healthy condition.
Okay. I think you have answered to a question that can a diet alter the gut microbiome and make it healthy? And also she's asking, is there any way to analyze the metabolic activity of human residing microbes?
Yeah, madam, the question is not clear.
Can a diet alter the gut microbiome and make it healthy?
Yeah, that is very sure, because the microorganisms present in the food itself is a major determinant of our gut microbiome. So surely, maybe it may be like in the coming years, we may identify its more role in the lifestyle disease also. Maybe we may be able to have a better management of lifestyle disease due to the management of food. That means the management of microorganisms present in the food also.
Okay, and is there any mechanism to analyze the metabolic activity of the human residing microbes?
Yeah, there we can have, based on our objective, that we have to design the experiment in such a way that, for example, as I mentioned in some of the slides, that for identifying an antibiotic compound. So if the objective is for antibiotic, means we can have samples from human part that we are interested, and we can make use of that one for antibiotic screening and confirmation. And like that, we also conducted some experiments to identify antibiotic resistance in different individuals, especially hospital staff also, where we collected the microbial samples from different individuals. So it is possible.
Yes. Okay, sir. So I don't think there are any more questions. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having accepted our invitation and giving us such a lengthy, lecture involving the whole lot of all the information that we needed for a microbiome. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. And I also thank
for providing me an opportunity, and sorry for the interruption course, because now I am in a university quarters and we are now in the top of a hill. So at one particular point only we used to get the net connection. So that's why some interruption happened. and I am sorry for that one.
No problem, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir. And I also thank all the participants. We have got a wide response. I thank all those who have joined and enjoyed this webinar. Thank you so much. And with this, we can conclude this session and hoping to have another webinar next week. Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Radha.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you, sir.